I'm Dwight Drummond. Tonight, Ontario records the most COVID-19 cases in a single day so far.
Today's numbers, they're deeply concerning. We know that we're in the second wave.
700 cases and confirmation of a second wave, but how bad will that wave be? Details on the modeling that shows we could hit 1,000 cases every day in just a few weeks. Plus,
my mom said it shut down for some reason, and I got worried.
Getting scared a lot.
For the first time, a Toronto school is shut down after a COVID outbreak, and documenting the past through the eyes of his loyal customers.
They had a life, they had their struggles, they have a story to tell, and they should be respected and appreciated.
An official acknowledgement that we are in a second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, 700 new infections, the most in a single day since the outbreak began. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley joins us live from the legislature with more now. Mike, there's now even more pressure on the Ford government to take action.
And Dwight, these calls for new restrictions are not just about today's number, as startling as that number is. It's about how quickly the average daily number of cases has been climbing all through September, and the fears that the impact on the province's hospitals could be just around the corner. In case there was any doubt, Premier Doug Ford makes it official.
Ontario is now in the second wave of COVID-19.
You can see the evidence of the second wave in both the lengthy testing lineups and the climbing pandemic curve. Ontario's previous one-day peak was way back in April. After a summer lull, the case numbers started rising sharply this month until hitting today's record of 700.
700.
A number that provokes strong reactions.
That's a lot. That's too many. Seem to be going in the wrong direction here.
That's quite shocking.
Very scary that we're going to have to go to a total lockdown again. Nobody wants that.
So what should the government do?
I think they should be pulling back and we should be going back to phase 2.
Yeah, they've got to do something. Otherwise Thanksgiving and Christmas and we're back in a lockdown.
Today's numbers, they're deeply concerning.
Despite that concern, the province announced no new prevention measures today and no clear answers on what would trigger a rollback to stage 2 of its reopening plan. That's what the province's hospital association wants to see in the GTA and Ottawa. The health minister isn't keen.
We don't want to turn back a stage unless we absolutely have to, but if we do have to, we will.
Was today's record just a blip? This expert says watch the numbers as the week unfolds.
But certainly rising numbers and numbers rising as quickly as they are is concerning for exponential spread, which means we've really lost control of it.
Right now, we're anticipating if it keeps going, we have to assume it could be a lot worse than the first wave.
Well, today's record comes as fresh modeling suggests that Ontario is going to surpass 1,000 new cases a day by mid-October. The researchers who did this modeling played out 4 different scenarios about what the second wave is going to look like in Ontario. And in all but their best case scenario, they figure that there are going to be so many COVID-19 patients coming into the province's intensive care units that hospitals are going to be faced with having to cancel non-emergency surgeries. Dwight?
Wow. Okay. Thank you for that, Mike. Now, nearly half of the new COVID-19 cases are right here in Toronto, the city recording 344 new infections.
It's plain to see that there is an immediate rising risk in Toronto of continued and significant COVID-19 resurgence.
Dr. Davila says she will recommend to City Council this week that restaurants and bars reduce their capacity limit from 100 to 75 people. As well, she wants contact tracing info to be taken from each patron at a table, and that the number of people allowed at one table be reduced from 10 to 6. Also, that background music be no louder than the level of normal conversation. This is meant to keep people from having to lean in closely when talking to one another. It will also help to keep people from raising their voices, which can lead to more droplets in the air. Now, Davila says it's also time to reassess our social circles or bubbles.
Fighting COVID-19 demands we limit contact with people we don't live with and watch our distance when we're with them. Why we need to stay at least 6 feet away from people we don't live with. Why mask wearing makes a difference. Why washing your hands makes a difference.
Dr. Davila will also recommend that the city extend the bylaws that were put in place to help manage the pandemic until next year. A Scarborough Elementary School is the first in the GTA to close because of COVID-19. It is the second school to have an outbreak, but it's the only one forced to shut the doors for a whole week. Let's go live to Ali Chiasson, who's at Mason Road Junior Public for us tonight. Ali, can you tell us why that school is closed and not any of the others?
Well, Dwight, there are a lot of factors at play, and there are a lot of factors to consider when deciding to close a school. Everything from the size of the school to the nature of the infections themselves. It can be confusing, but we try to break it down using this school as an example.
My mom said it shut down for some reason, and I got worried.
Leave it to a straight-A student to worry about homework.
I began to panic that I wouldn't go to school because if I had to not go to school, I would have so much work to do.
Mason Road Junior Public School parents have been doing more of the worrying. Over the last couple of days, they've been keeping on top of emails as school staff tested positive one by one.
They did email, and then they said they had one case, then it went to 2 and 3.
And now?
They emailed last night that a student got it. So it's very concerning.
While it's not the first school to have more than one case, it is the first school to shut down for a whole week.
So we certainly don't close school down easily or lightly.
There is no firm threshold for a number of cases to trigger a closure. It's a judgment call, and public health officials make that judgment. Using Mason Road Junior Public School as an example,
there were 4 cases related to the school. 3 were in staff and 1 was in a student. We want to determine, are there other students that are sick that we're unaware of? And this is a smaller school.
There are certain factors to be considered when deciding whether to send just a classroom home to isolate versus an entire school.
How much do teachers interact with multiple classes?
Probably the biggest factor, Dr. Dubé says.
It's when you get in the situation where someone could have got it at school.
We also can't ignore the increasing cases in our communities and the role that plays, something Education Minister Stephen Lecce touched on today.
The fix to this challenge in schools, likewise in congregate care settings, is to reduce the risk within our community.
If it comes down to it, he says regional school closures would be on the table. The cons, in the meantime, are wasting no time in taking their daughter for a test.
I know they said on Friday they started in the pharmacies, so I'm going to go look at that and see what's happening there.
As for the schooling itself,
I have a bigger son in high school who's doing virtual actually, and that seems to be working pretty well. So I may consider with the virtual because that's much safer.
the deadline for TDSB parents to switch their kids to the virtual school is this Wednesday officially. So I have a feeling the number of cases in schools going forward over the next couple of days is going to influence some parental decisions. Dwight.
I think you are correct. Thank you, Ali.
You got it.
Despite the drastic spike in COVID-19 cases, most major GTA casinos officially reopened their doors today. As of 10 a.m. this morning, Casino Woodbine, Great Blue Heron, and Casino Ajax welcome guests back for the first time in 6 months. Safety precautions are in place. There's screening at the door, sanitizer stations throughout, and only 50 players are allowed in at a time. Now, table games are off limits, and play sessions will be capped at 2 hours. Guests will have to book their spot online in advance, and so far, demand is high. According to Casino Woodbine's website, all time slots are full for the next 4 days. There were 2 large public gatherings this weekend. One was an anti-mask demonstration in downtown Toronto. The other saw a massive group of people gather in Wasaga Beach to watch car stunts. But the events only resulted in a handful of fines for breaking physical distancing rules. Greg Ross explains.
The threat of rising numbers in the province was not enough to keep car enthusiasts from Wasaga Beach this weekend. Cell phone video shows crowds cheering while others perform stunts in their cars, all seemingly ignoring provincial physical distancing guidelines, prompting a frustrated Premier Ford to say this today.
I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It's just reckless behavior and shouldn't be tolerated by any of us. You know, you're just hurting your own family member. Who wants to hurt their own family? Who wants to hurt their grandparents? You know, maybe these guys do.
A large contingent of OPP officers were on scene, but they say they were mainly focused on going after drivers performing illegal stunts because that was the more pressing safety issue.
Our officers issued 172 provincial offense notices in relation to things like moving violations, careless driving, stunt driving, speeding.
Only 11 fines were handed out for not following the province's physical distancing guidelines. But there could be more to come as officers try to pinpoint organizers of this rally.
It's very difficult to identify who the ringleaders are and who organized this particular event. So certainly we have an ongoing investigation.
Hundreds more gathered at Yonge Dundas Square on Saturday for an anti-mask protest, while Toronto police had officers on scene. Enforcing Ontario's physical distancing regulations was not their focus either. In a statement to CBC, a Toronto police representative said everyone has the lawful right to peacefully protest, and officers were in attendance to ensure the safety of everyone. No arrests were made and no tickets were issued in relation to the protest.
I think it's important that we all appreciate that it requires the very significant professional judgment of experienced law enforcement professionals to make the decision as to how to effectively balance public safety, in this case with public health orders surrounding masks and gatherings as examples, with that of public order and preventing situations from escalating.
So trade the fear for anger.
The rally was led by this man, Chris Sakosha. Sakosha has consistently shown contempt for public health measures over the past several months and rallied people not to follow them. Police confirm he was issued a $1,000 fine, but not for this rally. It was for breaking his federally imposed travel quarantine. Social media posts show that Sakosha, who has also identified himself as Chris Sky, spoke at an anti-lockdown rally in Ireland on September 12th. He did not immediately respond to a request for comment from CBC News. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
New Sick Kids research focusing on Black Canadians aims to collect thousands of blood samples to see who's been infected and why. Only 9% of Toronto's residents are considered Black, but Black Torontonians now make up 22% of the city's COVID-19 cases. And as Lauren Pelly shows us, there's hope this study will shed light on risk factors.
Inside an examination room at Black Creek Community Health Centre, a volunteer gets his blood taken. It's to see if he was previously infected with the virus behind COVID-19.
All right, thank you so much. You're all done.
The test only took a few minutes, but the results could be useful for years.
We're trying to get a better understanding of the extent to which COVID has penetrated into the Black community.
Dr. Upton Allen's research team is hoping to study blood samples from thousands of Black Canadians. The goal is looking for trends in risk factors, from someone's socioeconomic status to their pre-existing medical conditions.
If one is able to identify risk groups or what is it that drives infection, then one can determine how best to prevent those infections among those individuals.
That's crucial for the many Black residents living in areas like Toronto's northwest corner. Here, COVID-19 cases are more than 10 times higher than many lower-risk neighborhoods.
To hear that our community is being inundated and being labeled as the most potent, community for it is disheartening to hear.
Many of the people who do live here, they have to go to work. They have to take the bus to get to work. Some of them are in jobs where they are in close contact with folks, so their chances of infection are higher.
The executive director of Black Creek Community Health Centre says the more researchers learn about the virus,
the more we can have targeted interventions.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
And if you're curious about how COVID is affecting white Torontonians, they make up about 48% of the city's population, but only 17% of the COVID-19 cases in the city.
Meet the Souls of St. Clair, a 7-year photography project sharing the stories of Toronto's Italian immigrants. Evangelina King, coming up, I'll introduce you to this woman and the photographer behind the project.
I picked up the control to turn on the AC today, but then I thought I heard the wife coming up the stairs, so I put it back down.
You knew better.
She won't let us turn it on. It's too late in the season for that.
You know what? And she's right, because today was the last day. So if you could make it through this, you know, that's kind of it. And really, it's a tale of things being split between what was happening in southwestern Ontario and then kind of from the GTA into eastern Ontario. Totally different scenario, because the cold front that's going to be changing our weather pattern was already having an impact there in southwestern Ontario. If you're wondering what I mean, have a look at what you can see right here in terms of this weather, and then I'm going to step aside. And yeah, that's what was happening in southwestern Ontario. So kind of weather-wise, a miserable day back towards Windsor with the cloud cover, rain showers, and the temperature 14 degrees. Their high was 19, but 14. And then you know what it was like here in the GTA. Quite a bit of sunshine, 25. Right now it's up to 26, feeling like 30 with the humidity. Well, that weather, yeah, moves from west to east coming our way. So I got to show you the radar imagery. There it is. So along that front, we'll have some gustier winds. The winds have been gusty towards 40 kilometers an hour. That's pushing our way. Most of it holding off, kind of pushing towards the GTA after 8, towards 9 o'clock. We'll see this moving in. Some heavier rain, maybe a few embedded thunderstorms, a few lightning strikes kind of coming through. And then by 7 tomorrow morning, yeah, it's pushed well on off towards the east. So it's going to start to bring those temperatures down. Not too bad overnight tonight. A few isolated showers possible tomorrow. More so, it's going to be that the clouds really fill in into the afternoon and the temperatures kind of not really into the air conditioning area, into that realm for tomorrow. 14 tonight, 19 tomorrow. So your wife, yeah, she'd be right there, Dwight.
Yeah, no AC until next summer. Thank you, Colette.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
A horrific start to a double murder trial in Oshawa, and a warning: some of the details we're about to tell you are graphic. Today, family members heard the details of how the accused killer allegedly tried to dispose of 18-year-old Rory Haish's body.
I won't lie, I've thought of every scenario in my head in the last couple of years, because I had to, because I was going crazy not knowing what was done to my daughter and how this happened and why, you know. So today shed a lot of light on the nitty-gritty, the worst part, and you know, we're going to get through this together. We have to. It's not something we have a choice in, right? We're supporting each other as best as we can, but it's going to get worse before it gets better, you know.
Adam Strong has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder of Haish and the presumed death of 18-year-old Candace Fitzpatrick. Durham police arrested Strong in December 2017, months after Haish's torso was found in Lake Ontario. The pregnant teen vanished in August of that year. Now, in July 2018, police allegedly say they found parts of Haish's body in garbage bags in a freezer, as well as in this home's plumbing. They also allege they found Fitzpatrick's DNA on a knife in Strong's basement. The 18-year-old was last seen in 2008. The trial will proceed in front of a judge alone. Police have identified the man killed in a shooting near Kipling and Mount Olive Drive in Etobicoke last night. 24-year-old Joseph Tyran Martelly was one of 2 men shot outside a townhouse just after 7:30. He died at the scene. A 21-year-old was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries. Police say the suspects fired in multiple directions with zero regard for public safety. There's a playground in the complex, and many families were outside with their kids at the time. Investigators say there were 2 shooters who fled in a black SUV. An Aurora man has been charged in the death of his wife, who's been missing since July. 61-year-old Helen Cito was last seen on the evening of July 29th at her home in the Bathurst and St. John's Side Road area in Aurora. Now, despite the fact police haven't found her body, they believe she was murdered. Last Wednesday, they arrested and charged her husband, 61-year-old John Cito. Today, they released images of what John Cito is believed to have been wearing at the time of his wife's disappearance. They are asking anyone who recalls seeing him or Helen Cito's missing silver Acura RDX to contact them. Toronto's Bengali community is getting some answers after more than a dozen young men took their own lives in a span of just 2 years. A small group within their community has been trying to find out why, spending years conducting interviews. Farah Morelli now on what they've discovered.
It's been 3.5 years since the body of 21-year-old Fahmi Rahman was pulled from the waters of Lake Ontario, but the memory is still very raw.
On March 31st, we got the call that they found him.
even then we're hope beyond hope. We were thinking, okay, maybe they found someone else, but it was him.
Rahman left behind a suicide note in his room weeks before, talking about the pain he felt. He'd been diagnosed with depression 7 months earlier.
He loved his family very much, so we never thought that he would ever take the step, because we know how final it is.
Rahman is one of 13 young Bengali men in the GTA who died by suicide between 2016 and 2017.
The number of people who committed suicide within a very short period of time was alarming, actually.
Alarming enough to prompt some professionals in the community to explore why. They found a pattern.
All of them are in between, the 17 to 23 in this age group. They were all in university student or college student, and all are male.
For the past 2 years, the group has been interviewing parents and young men in the Bengali community, culminating in a report.
Number one findings and major findings was the communication gap. So the communication gap between parents and children.
In group discussions, they learned young men felt pressure to perform academically and were searching for someone to share their feelings with, which can carry a stigma.
This is kind of, the taboo and based on the mental health, like people got discriminated.
I was just having a lot of mental breakdowns, and it was just getting worse and worse to the point where I didn't even think I needed to live.
Some of those findings ring true for 19-year-old Ifaj Hassan.
I still think there's a stigma. Like, a lot of people, they're afraid to open up. I myself was afraid to open up at first.
It's kind of like this pressure to always be the best that we can possibly be, because our parents went through all these adversities.
The report also found cultural roots to the pressure and the stigma, as well as systemic inequalities faced by the community, such as the type of work or having to work multiple jobs.
Our main goal shouldn't be to help convince our parents that mental health is a thing and that we need to fix it with our parents. I think the conversation should start with us so that we can pass it on to our kids and their kids onwards.
The group shared its findings through Facebook Live events like this.
If this research can save one life, we would say our research is successful.
Saving one life can mean saving a family a lifetime of pain. Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Halton Regional Police are announcing the largest fentanyl seizure in the service's history with a value of more than $4 million.
As little as 2 milligrams of fentanyl can kill a person. If you can't picture what that looks like, imagine a few grains of sand. The seizure of 10 kilograms of fentanyl is the equivalent of potentially 5 million lives saved.
The year-long investigation called Project Mover started in late 2019. Over the course of the probe, investigators searched 6 residences across the GTA. On top of the fentanyl, officers seized more than 1 kilogram each of cocaine and methamphetamine, as well as 2 cars, 2 guns, and more than $300,000. 9 people are facing a total of 30 charges. Halton police say they've responded to 150 overdoses so far this year. 22 of those have been fatal. York police are investigating a string of suspicious fires in Markham early this morning. A total of 11 vehicles were destroyed by fires at 4 separate businesses.
There's 5 specific vehicles that we're looking at. The rest of the vehicles next to them are from the exposures being close to those vehicles set on fire.
Police say they were called to the scene near Langstaff Road East and Cedar Avenue just before 4 this morning. Several nearby homes were evacuated as a precaution while crews put out the fires. There were no injuries reported. Any witnesses are asked to contact police. Unifor members have voted in favor of a new 3-year collective agreement with the Ford Motor Company. The deal includes almost $2 billion to bring electric vehicle production to Oakville. It would also bring the production and assembly of some engines to the Windsor plant. The union negotiated a 5% wage increase over the life of the agreement, as well as a new higher payment program and premiums for afternoon and midnight shifts. Unifor begins talks with Fiat Chrysler later this week. Quebec has been seeing a sharp increase in new cases over the past few days. Starting October 1st, the provincial government is imposing new restrictions for 3 of the hardest hit regions, putting them under Quebec's highest COVID-19 alert level, red.
The region of Montreal, the Capitale Nationale, and the region of Chaudière-Appalaches are switching to red alert. The following rules will apply from October 1st to 28th in these 3 regions. First, only people living at the same address can be inside a home at the same time, but the general rule is we must stay at our address. Bars, dining rooms, and restaurants will be closed starting October 1st. Theaters, cinema, and other gathering places will also be closed.
The provincial government says it's looking at measures to compensate businesses affected by the latest shutdowns. Now, the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic remains a serious health concern for Indigenous communities, but it also appears to be putting part of Ottawa's reconciliation agenda in jeopardy. The government had planned to end all long-term drinking water advisories on First Nations by next March, but the mention of that deadline was missing from last week's throne speech. Olivia Stefanovich has more.
Before the pandemic, the Liberal government was already facing challenges with its goal to eliminate all long-term boil water advisories on reserves. Now, with COVID-19, there's an added layer of complications. On top of dealing with short construction seasons, some communities have shut their borders, so that means contractors can't come in, and that's all to do with slowing the spread of the virus. A senior government source says the Liberals aren't as comfortable with the March 2021 deadline as they were before the pandemic. Regardless, Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller is pushing ahead.
That deadline is very much one that we are working aggressively to meet, and we'll be deploying funds to meet.
It's a big job. The federal government says it has 61 long-term boil water advisories to lift within the next 6 months. And this isn't the only reconciliation project affected by the pandemic. COVID-19 has also delayed plans to create an action plan to respond to the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And critics say it's time for the government to stop using the pandemic as an excuse.
I think it's one of the tactics they know how to use best. They are great at making excuses. They are great at finding loopholes. They are great at making it possible to see those excuses as acceptable.
The federal government says it's accelerating work on an action plan to respond to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and it's spending $6 million each year over the next 5 years to develop and update a strategy. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
The big political story in Washington today is about Donald Trump's taxes. The New York Times is reporting that Trump paid little to no federal tax for the last 20 years.
This is a national security question.
We'll bring you the latest reaction next. Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou is back in court in British Columbia today for the next phase of her extradition hearing. These are shots of her leaving her home in Vancouver and heading to the courthouse today. Her lawyers are arguing that Canadian officials have been misled about the strength of the case against her. Meng was arrested at Vancouver's airport late in 2018. She is wanted in the U.S. on fraud and conspiracy charges. The Quebec woman accused of sending a letter with poison in it to President Donald Trump must remain in U.S. custody. Pascal Ferrier was arrested while trying to enter the U.S. at the Peace Bridge in Buffalo last week. She had a handgun and nearly 300 rounds of ammo with her at the time. Officials had intercepted a letter from Canada to the U.S. at a mail sorting facility. The letter contained ricin, a fatal toxin. Ferrier has pleaded not guilty to the charge of threatening the president. A judge said today there is clear and convincing material that she poses a danger to Trump and others. There are new questions today about Donald Trump's financial dealings in the wake of the bombshell revelations about his tax returns. The New York Times obtained more than 2 decades of his tax data and says he paid little or no income tax for years. The president is calling that fake news, but Democrats are raising far more serious concerns about the Times report. Ellen Morrow now with the latest from Washington.
The Biden campaign wasted no time launching this ad just hours after the New York Times report came out, detailing decades of tax avoidance by Donald Trump.
You have in Donald Trump a president who spends his time thinking about how he can work his way out of paying taxes. With Joe Biden, you have somebody who has a completely different perspective on what it means to be a working family in this country.
The Times says Trump only paid $750 in federal income taxes in the years he won the presidency and took office. Trump, the Times says, didn't pay income tax at all in 10 of the 15 previous years. The president has denounced the report and says he can't release his returns because they're under audit. But being under audit does not legally prevent Trump from making the returns public. He's the only president in modern times not to do so. The Times also reports that Trump is facing more than $400 million worth of debt, most coming due in the next 4 years. That raises national security concerns, says House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
We take an oath to protect and defend. This president is the commander-in-chief. He has exposure to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, to whom the public has a right to know.
Close to the White House, an angry reaction.
It's just more proof that he's a con man and always has been. Makes my blood boil. Everything he does makes my blood boil. And what's going to make my blood boil even more is if there are no consequences to this.
It's unclear what, if any, impact this might have on President Trump's support. His base has shown time and time again it is very loyal, but polls overall show Trump lagging behind, and his taxes will almost certainly be a line of attack for Joe Biden at tomorrow night's first presidential debate. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Washington.
The Buckeye State is in the spotlight this week for more than one reason. As Ellen was saying, the first U.S. presidential debate is set to take place in Cleveland, Ohio tomorrow, and both Donald Trump and Joe Biden know Heartland voters will play a critical role in the November election. Katie Simpson looks at how the race is shaping up in the small community of Lordstown.
If Donald Trump is going to get a second term, he's going to need voters in rural communities like this one. We're in Lordstown, Ohio, about an hour outside of Cleveland. It's a village of about 3,000 people where the lawns are well kept and political support is out in full display, as you can see. This part of the state is in what's called a pivot county. Voters here in 2008 and 2012 voted for Barack Obama, but in 2016 it flipped and was picked up by Trump. A big reason why is because Trump promised to restore the auto sector and manufacturing jobs. At the time, there was a GM plant here that was a major employer in the community, employing thousands of people. The same week, though, that Trump was inaugurated, the company announced layoffs. Not as many people were buying the compact cars that the plant helped manufacture. Layoffs led to more layoffs, and eventually, in the spring of 2019, GM closed the plant. Now, as this was all playing out, President Trump tried to reassure voters that the jobs would be restored. He even went so far in 2017 at a rally to tell people here, don't sell your homes. The jobs will be coming back. Those comments are interpreted in wildly different ways, depending on your perspective here in this community. Trump supporters say the president just needs more time to bring back those jobs. One Trump supporter said to me that, Rome wasn't built in a day. You just need to be patient. Democrats see it differently. They see it as a betrayal, a motivating factor to get out there and knock on doors and install lawn signs on those front lawns that are well manicured, even in the middle of a pandemic. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Lordstown, Ohio.
And that debate begins at 9 p.m. Eastern and runs for 90 minutes. And we'll have special coverage beginning on CBC News Network tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can watch it there or listen on CBC Radio. It is another beautiful summer-like day. Will this warm weather continue? Colette joins us after the break with a long-range look at your forecast. Stay with us. We'll be right back. It is one of the city's most iconic neighborhoods. St. Clair's Corso Italia is home to generations of Italian Canadians, and at the center of the community is a much-loved bakery. Now, a man who helps run that store has published a collection of photos documenting the people of Corso Italia. Angelina King met up with him and one of his subjects, his Nona.
Rabbit with potatoes and carrots and tomatoes, delicious. I make a mean rabbit.
Mary DeLeo, a soul of St. Clair. At 90, she's vibrant, funny, and wise. She loves Instagram.
I believe that there isn't anything nicer than Instagram right now, today. You don't write letters, but you can write letters on your phone, a cell phone.
Sharing cooking techniques.
This is one of my Frosa, which is an omelet.
And most of all, her family.
If you're with family, you're a complete person.
Mary left Italy when she was 7, first going to Connecticut, then arriving in Canada in 1948 with her husband. 60 years ago, they opened Tre Marie Bakery on St. Clair near Dufferin, now a popular community hub and the cornerstone of her grandson's book, Souls of St. Clair.
She's iconic.
Over the years, Franco De Leo met his subjects working at the family bakery. It's also where he photographed them after discovering the importance of preserving their stories and capturing their personalities.
They had a life, they had their struggles, they have a story to tell, and they should be respected and appreciated. They're symbols of our connection to an old world that's disappearing.
He says they helped shape the neighborhood, describing it as unique and tight-knit, the perfect blend of old and new.
I'm walking in the street and I'm seeing a family with their, with the baby stroller, and an older Italian woman bends over and she interacts with them, because she's met them before. She asks them how they're doing, how's the baby doing? Maybe she gives advice, maybe she, so there's this interaction, there's this love, there's this sharing, there's this community.
Some of the souls of St. Clair have passed since they were photographed.
I was very happy to see this picture up, but in a way I was sad, it brings back so much memories, right? I wish he was still here with us.
And for those with family that are here, a message from Mary.
Stay close to your family. Don't drift away. Older people need that touching, a bonding for them to continue on as they're going because they're lonely.
Sage advice from one of the remaining souls of St. Clair. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to our Bellissima ragazza with the forecast. Can you tell I live close to Corso Italia there?
Yes, I can. I love it. I wish I could carry on in that vein, but I'm not very good at that. But I will carry on just telling you, what a wonderful string of days we were able to put together with these temperatures so far above seasonal. Today, in terms of the string of days, this was the last one. Daytime highs, 26 degrees, Toronto. Hamilton at 25. Kitchener, or shall I call it the pride of Jamal Murrayville. Really, I am a Raptors fan. We know it, but once they were out, we had to cheer for the Denver Nuggets, and they just couldn't quite make it through. Kitchener, 25 degrees. And have a look at Windsor, 19. That was the high today, but actually they're sitting at 14 now. So that front that's coming through, the reason we're going to see that today is the last day in this string of wonderful days, well, that front coming our way. The Humidex values, though, we're sitting at nearly 30. The humidity is going to be coming down. We're going to kind of see a gradual change in things. So we're going to see the temperatures kind of coming down closer to seasonal for the next couple of days as this front moves through. And then towards the end of the week, oh boy, it's going to be coming down even further. So we've got the rain that's moving through now. It has been kind of a gray day through Windsor. That's pushing in towards London and Goderich. You see that. Mostly it's going to be holding off till after, say, 8, 9 o'clock, maybe towards 10, and the heaviest stuff coming through around midnight going through the GTA. A lot of it then pulling towards the north as it moves through, and most of it gone by morning. So as you're getting ready for work or getting the kids ready to head out the door to school, I think we'll actually get into some sunny breaks for the beginning of the day on Tuesday, and then the cloud deck will fill back in as we go into the afternoon, and just a few little spotty showers perhaps showing up into the afternoon. Primarily, it's just going to be that it'll be gray skies in the afternoon for the GTA. Then as we get into Wednesday, likely we'll see some wet weather actually returning into our skies again. Overnight tonight, you'll see that it's not a huge change in our temperature, so that's not that hard to digest tonight. It's just the winds will be a little bit breezy at times. We're going to see them somewhat gusty. Isolated shower risk tomorrow. Average high about 18, and look at what these numbers look like for tomorrow. So that's kind of what we're talking about for Tuesday. Wednesday, maybe not quite this cool. Depends on that rainfall activity. Some of it may be a little further east of us. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, that's when things really cool down. The pride of Kitchener is what I was trying to say, Jamal Murray.
I heard Vince Carter calling him that on ESPN, and it was so cool because nobody else knew. They're like, Kitchener, what's that?
Yeah, well, they know it there, boy.
They know it now. They do.
Now we all do.
Thank you, Colette.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The United Nations held a virtual summit today to help protect the environment.
We're committed to protecting 25% of our land and 25% of our oceans by 2025.
We'll bring you more from the meeting and what countries are pledging to do coming up. A lot of things can go wrong when you buy a house, but here's one you've likely never heard about. A woman discovered her new home security system was in the control of a stranger thanks to the security company running the system. Rosa Marcatelli now with how some say cancellation policies seem written to benefit the companies instead of protecting customers.
A stranger messaged Taylor Fornell out of the blue, telling her he had complete control over her home security system and could prove it. He then showed her how he could remotely disarm the alarm, unlock the doors and windows, and track when she left the house, all with a few clicks on the security company's own app.
If he wasn't an honest person, could have come in and done who knows what to my home, my family.
So yeah, I went and opened the app. And
That stranger is Rob Hall, the former owner of the house. He wanted to warn Fornell the security company Vivint hadn't cut off service when he canceled it weeks before moving out. When he later called the company again, demanding it deactivate the app ASAP, he says he was told he'd have to wait out the 30-day cancellation period.
I finally said to him, I was like, so you're going to give me access to somebody else's house? I literally could go on the app, I could watch the doors, I could watch them leave the house. Then I could walk up to the front door, unlock it, disarm the system, walk in and steal everything in the place because an alarm company gave me access.
That was enough to get Vivint to finally cut off his access, he says, a process that took 30 seconds. Several others tell Go Public it happened to them too.
Yes, I'm here. Come.
I know you're here. Who are you?
Problems with security systems in general are well documented. Take this U.S. couple. They had to deactivate their Google Nest system after a hacker taunted the family through their own security cameras.
I was horrified.
In Canada, experts say these situations are a result of outdated privacy laws and cancellation policies written to benefit companies instead of protecting consumers.
It's advantageous for the monitoring companies not to cancel your service, with the hopes that the new homeowner will actually come on board, sign up to the service.
Vivint says Rob Hall didn't provide a move-out date when he canceled. And while its policy is to confirm timing, the company says that step was overlooked by staff in all of the cases Go Public brought to its attention. It says it's since reviewed its process to make sure situations like this are handled according to policy moving forward, adding that it did honor all aspects of the customer agreement in all of the cases. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Calgary.
Justin Trudeau was one of the speakers today as the United Nations held a virtual summit of world leaders on protecting nature. Experts say time is running out to save much of the world's plant and animal species. So today, leaders from more than 70 countries, including Canada, pledged to step up their efforts to save them. Cindy Palm with more details now from London.
We need to act in concert together to protect biodiversity.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau joined other world leaders in promising to do more to try to stop catastrophic losses of animal and plant species.
We're committed to protecting 25% of our land and 25% of our oceans by 2025 and hitting that 30% for each by 2030.
Leaders are trying to build momentum ahead of the UN Biodiversity Conference in Kunming, China in May, where nearly 200 countries will negotiate a new agreement on protecting nature. Without any action, a report from the environmental organization Nature Conservancy says 30 to 50% of all species could be lost by 2050. During the virtual event, heads of state vowed to make sure a post-pandemic recovery plan factors in the environment. Even the UK, which has the highest death toll in Europe, committed to a protection plan.
We can't afford dither and delay because biodiversity loss is happening today. It's happening at a frightening rate.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson promised to make nearly a third of all UK land protected by 2030.
I think the UK government is really keen to demonstrate it's playing an international leadership role. Remember that the UK is hosting the Glasgow Climate Summit, potentially at the back end of next year, and it wants to work with China, which is hosting the Biodiversity Summit also next year, to ensure we get a collaborative effort to try and tackle the twin crises of climate change and biodiversity reduction.
But not everybody has signed the pledge, including the governments of the US, Brazil, and China. Cindy Palm, CBC News, London.
I'm Ismail Alpha, host of Metro Morning. On tomorrow's program, the nurse who cared for Toronto's first patient who had COVID-19. It's been over 8 months since that day, so what did she learn from that experience? And how's she feeling as we watch to see if and when a second wave comes? Join me weekdays from 5:30 till 8:30 for Metro Morning on CBC Radio 1.
Colette, we forgot to say thank you. On Friday, you said you guys are going to enjoy a beautiful weekend, and boy, did we ever.
Oh, well, you're welcome. You're welcome. I like to get a little bit of a thank you once in a while, so a little gratitude. I have nothing to do with it, but you're welcome for it. You know, I'm glad I have this moment with y'all because I do want to mention, you can see this line out here, out kind of front of some of the main line here as the front's coming towards us. It's kind of making some haste here. So I'd actually say over the next hour here, as we're getting towards 8 o'clock, we're going to see some of this pressing and getting a little closer towards the city. So some of it may be moving in a little more quickly, and I want you to be aware of that. Not all of it coming in as we get closer towards the overnight hours here. Tomorrow morning, see some of those numbers as we're 12, 13 for the overnight temperatures. It's not that bad. 14 for the city. You know, we're seeing this being a gradual changeover in our temperatures, okay? Tomorrow, we may even have some sunshine to start the day off, and then the clouds kind of pushing in a little bit more. A few isolated showers possible after what we see later this evening and overnight tonight. And 19 for the high, so we have a day to kind of get used to this. And then a little bit cooler as we go into Wednesday and a bit more rain coming back into the forecast. It's near the end of the week that the temperatures really come down. You know, we were talking about Jamal Murray a little bit earlier in the Pride of Kitchener. I feel like I was a little remiss because we also have to mention the family heritage there, the Jamaican-Canadian heritage as well, not just the Kitchener heritage. My brother-in-law would give me a hard time if I did not mention that, too.
There's a mashup there, and we got the best mashups in the city,
I
don't
know
we, Colette?
we do, so we got to give it all, right?
Man, I wish he was a Raptor. Thanks, Colette.
I know. So many. Andrew Wiggins, with so many we'd like to have.
We're going to get one yet. That's our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Have a great night, everybody.